Wow, that's a definition of cutting it fine, isn't it? Well done. 2 cups of tea and with seconds to go. Thank you very much. Cheers, everyone, and welcome back to The Moment here on New Reality TV.
And a new week.
With our dear friend, new week, and an old friend, Tom Evans, joining us in just a moment. Siri said, hi, you two. Here I am here. It was going to be just me and Tom. It's you three this morning, Siri, and you'll be pleased to see Tom on our screen. So shall we, without further ado, Mrs. M?
Let's bring him on now.
Spin Tom up. Hello, Tom. Good morning to you.
I completely feel completely spun up.
That's what people say, isn't it? Spin. We got a nice diagram from you to spin up onto the screen.
I mean, everything is in spin. The whole universe is in spin.
Wow.
Yes, feels like it in so many ways.
We missed you the last 3 weeks, 2 weeks, because you've been here every Monday for 4 weeks, and then you had two weeks off, and you were celebrating a very important day, weren't you?
Well, it's a 40th years together with lovely Louise. So 40 years together. It was it was a pancake day we got together, and I looked up Pancake Day, Shrove Tuesday in 1995 when it all happened. And then we discovered last week that loads of things are 40 years old, like Live 8 and I don't know, Wham and Cross. All these things happen. Oh, Comic Relief. All these things sort of kicked off about 40 years ago. So obviously an auspicious time.
Auspicious and esteemed times for sure. Yeah. And what's the 40th anniversary known as? Which one's that? That's getting on for
Ruby. It's Ruby.
Okay, very good.
So in Cockney rhyming tradition, I took her out for a curry.
A Ruby Murray, a curry, very good. Excellent. Well, that's probably a little bit a better value, you might say, than buying an actual Ruby.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I should say, if you're listening and you're not from the UK, you probably don't know what we're just talking about.
Cockney rhyming slang.
In England, we have something called Cockney rhyming slang, and where we have code words for different things. And Ruby equals curry.
Yes,
it just so happens.
And now we're going to test Tom with a further test of Cockney rhyming slang. What's Cockney rhyming slang for mindfulness, Tom?
Or meditation? Is there something?
Oh, I guess it could be mindfulness, couldn't it? That's one of my. I've got a meditation. I've got a meditation called the Art of Mindfulness. I'll work that one out and come back to you.
Thank you.
I know. I often say just going for a med, so I could say going down the shed, couldn't I?
Going down the shed for a touch of the old med. And at this point, I think Americans and others will be scratching their heads thinking, what are these British people talking about? So let's bring it back to mindfulness. And just when you thought the word mindfulness had been overdone, and we've talked about it so much, no one knows what they mean anymore. You're going to take us to a new level, today, Tom?
Before we do that, though, can you just remind us of what we've spoken about in the previous 4 sessions? Because you took us through some different exercises, didn't you?
Yeah. So, I got asked some time ago to write this book, the Authority Guide to Practical Mindfulness, and
let me just give you the full screen so we can see that, Tom.
And in it, it's a very thin book, and the idea is 10 chapters, and it's quite the company that came up with it had all these authority guides to X, Y, and Z and stuff like that. And at the time, I was getting lots of corporate gigs, and so I thought that'd be a good idea. I'm become this authority on the thing. Having said that, I've never studied mindfulness officially. I've never been inside an ashram. I haven't studied Buddhism. So in the book, I say that I'm not a Buddhist or an anythingist, but there's some good Buddhist principles that we could all adhere to that are good for us. And one is that studying meditation. And I found out there were 4 ways of getting into the meditative state. And what I do in my meditations, I combine several in one meditation, but they are largely all swivel around the idea that the normal human mind, our monkey mind, can only experience one thought at a time. So if you're thinking about something other than the thing you're thinking about, then the thing you were thinking about gets replaced by the thing you're now thinking about.
Yes.
And if you use that technique, you can bamboozle the monkey mind into going quiet and quiescent. And that's kind of the meditative state. And so there was meditation on the breath, meditation on a mantra, meditation on a thing, which can be an object, or it can be a spot on the wall, or it can be, we use our yin yang clock, didn't we, with the thing going.
For that strong eye focus.
Meditation on mantras and meditation on thought itself. And what we're going to do is put all of those to get the jewels of that all together and put it into an omnibus edition. So we've captured it.
Yeah.
Well, I would say I don't want people to read about meditation or mindfulness. I want them to experience it as well.
Right, absolutely.
So each of the 10 chapters has got a 10-minute long meditation that goes with it.
Wow.
And Siri has illustrated. She's actually done live artworks to each of these meditations, and they're going up and being serialized on New Reality TV. Would you believe?
And it's this Siri Art and Music.
Siri does meditative artwork. I've got 4 more which I'm editing this week and uploading. But all of the meditations from that series are actually available on New Reality TV as well, which is great.
You make a great point, Tom. I'd love to reiterate, if I may. Studying meditation or studying mindfulness without meditating or being mindful is like studying a glass of wine, isn't it? Like looking at a picture and expecting to understand wine by just looking at pictures. Of all things, it would appear to me that meditation and mindfulness need to be an experiential. I mean, that's the great cosmic joke, isn't it? There's no point talking and looking at this, and hopefully we'll be doing a bit of it today as well.
Yeah, I always thought that all my books actually, and that's what got me into this. When I was writing about heightened states of awareness, I wrote this book on light bulb moments. I thought, well, you can read the theory, but wouldn't it be great if I got into the state when you experience the light bulb moment?
Right, yes.
And that's what got me into this thing. And then Insight Timer discovered me. I thought I was an author with meditations on the side, and then I very quickly became this meditation teacher that hasn't been inside an ashram or studied meditation with books on the side. It is all experiential, and because I'm an engineer, to me it's like, how can we use it to better ourselves in this world?
Yes.
And it's a bit like that whole idea that if a plane depressurizes, get your own mask on first, and then you can help other people, so you can stay calm most of the time, and then help other people be calm. It's what I call being nicely infectious. It sort of breeds out from there. Especially when you pay it forward, as I do, and so much of it is free on available. I got it as a free gift, so I think I should pass it on as a.
And let me acknowledge you, Tom, as somebody who must have made a massive contribution to net mindfulness. Should we call it that? Net mindfulness on the planet here, because you've reached millions of people. Yeah, I think it's fair to say, haven't you? With practical help and insight, taking the insight and Insight Timer, you've shown people what to do and given them a true experience of this. So we take our hat off to you for that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and to me, that's you can only do this stuff by the proof of a community. So you can't game the Insight Timer stats. You can't game the feedback from people. What I do love though is the fact that you create this thing once, put it up on this app, and then 10 years later, the same thing you created that maybe took an hour or so, 10 years later, people get benefit from today, and also a massive feedback loop as well. So you get into this state when, by paying it forward, things come right back at you. And I've got a whole course on that, which is free, funnily enough, called Abundance.
Of course it is.
I'm not surprised.
So by giving something out for free, then you get everything back in your life that you need, and not just money, all the other things like this wonderful platform, New Reality TV, turning up just at the perfect time, and it's full of wonderful people. So it's a nice place to be.
Yes. Excellent. I agree. We've got Mother Mulberry joining us, saying hello. Hello to everyone, and also to Siri. Morning. Hope you're well where you are. Tom, do you want me to bring up your slide?
Spin it up.
Do you want me to spin it up? The thing that
let's bring up what we're talking about today, what we thought we might talk about today.
Okay. So that's what you sent me this morning as an idea of what you'd like to talk about. Do you want to talk us through it?
Yeah, so it comes from the same book. So in that book, I mentioned 4 modes of meditation, and then obviously we went through those modes of meditation in the previous shows. In the same book, I talk about the 4 modes of mindfulness. Now, I didn't invent these. I just found them out on internet as I did a study, and they're kind of instead of mindfulness being this thing where I'll just go into a meditative state, it's a bit like I was brought up Catholic, and you don't just go to church on Sunday and be Christian or Catholic on Sunday. You should be good and use these principles all through the week. So same with mindfulness and meditation. And people say, what's the difference between mindfulness and meditation? And, well, meditation is almost like the mind technology you use to get into this mindful state, but it spreads outside just the 10 or so minutes that you might spend in meditation. And maybe talk about the top right one first, mindfulness of the body. And if you don't mind me sharing, Louisa, before we got on there. You said you're feeling slightly off today.
No, I've been feeling quite off with my creativity for a while, but that's coming back online.
Nice.
So something has changed, and that's what I mentioned to you.
Okay, so that's the important thing there, is that there's nothing wrong with that, but just to be aware then that the body is the vehicle for our soul, and in this case it's also the vehicle for our creative spirit as well. So you're not feeling so I'm just putting a little email thing together today, and I thought about it all last week and nothing would come through, but I didn't put myself under any pressure. There was nothing coming through the body. But the main thing that we should be aware of is just to look after the body, make sure it's hydrated, make sure it's got the right food, and also pay attention to any aches and pains. So for many years I carried a painful knee, and this knee would really flare up at times I was stepping forward in my life. It'd always be in pain, but then it would really flare up at times I was stepping forward. So just be mindful that things, aches and pains in our body, can be a bit of a sign that actually that needs some TLC, and or that something is happening in our mental sphere that's mirroring back into the physical body. And that leads us down to a
gift, perhaps. Then it's a messenger service rather than some wretched thing that we'd rather just be free of as quickly as possible, because that's the dominant culture we live in, isn't it?
It is, yeah. A lot of people get colds when an energy is going through. It's almost like the energy is passing through, and it's a classic thing that you wind down for Christmas and you get a wretched cold because your adrenaline level drops. The thing that's been driving you drops, and then that's actually stopped you picking up a dis-ease, as it's called. So be mindful of the body is important, but also then that leads into the bottom right, which is mindful of feelings and sensations. So when a sensation comes up, no matter what it be, I don't want to go into a specific sensation. It could be a dread or a sadness, or it might be a joy or love. It can be anything. Just be aware that this is a thing. And one of the meditations I do is it's important to create a distance between your thoughts and your mood. But that's not to override the mood or ride roughshod over it. Just be aware that there's this feeling that's bubbled up. And it's especially true also in making decisions. So, an opportunity comes your way. Often our head, because it's louder than our lower mind centers, can overrule what's going on, and we might go with it because it satisfies our ego, but our heart might not totally be in it, and our gut might not totally be in it. So there's a lovely routine you can go through. And in fact, it's in the first ever meditation I uploaded to Insight Time is called Be Calm. And I think we mentioned that when we were talking about mantras, weren't we? The idea that a mantra might be something sort of in Sanskrit, or it can also be in English, like be calm. Just relax. These are really, really good. Oh yeah, there you go. Thank you very much for bringing that one.
Yeah, there wasn't it. Free Hayanda.
That's definitely the one that came up for us. So when you're going to make a decision, feelings and sensations are really, really important, and you can ask your gut and your heart a question. So you can say to your gut, do you get a green light on this? And if you don't get a green light, you can then say, well, what would have to change so I could get a green light? And either you get an idea coming in a picture or a sound or whatever, or in words, or something externally gives you the sign of what needs to change so you can get a green light. So sometimes you don't get the instant feedback, but you might sort of just go out for a walk and then see something and get the sign that comes in. And the same is true of the heart. So if you're not totally in love with something, you can say, well, what has to change so I can be less lukewarm about it or less cold? And then you either get an idea straight in, which is the thing, or you get a sign that comes in. And then that nicely leads us on to mindfulness of the mind, or consciousness, that we should be aware, not just the mind doesn't just sit in the head, where it's all over our body, right? So you can have a tingling in your spine and your back, and that can be a sign. If you're a musician, you might find that your hands sort of feel like they got to move or something, or if you're an artist, that you've got to pick that brush out of the back of your head and take it out and start drawing.
Like Siri does.
Like Siri would do it. So there's sorry about the dogs in the background. So there's things of that nature, and then that leads us on to mindfulness of the way of things, the way that things should be, and that's not just with
What
us.
do you mean by that?
Well,
the way of things, or the
there's
way.
a right way to do things. There's a right way to do things, and that's not just a moral way to do things, but the correct order in the way to do things, the way that has got least impact but maximum impact, but least turbulence, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And it leads us on to what we're going to talk about next week, which is this concept of the Eightfold Noble Path, which might need a couple of weeks to talk through. So just the way of things, doing things the right way, doing things the moral way, doing things the way that has maximum benefit, minimum deleterious effects, that kind of thing.
I really like the idea of that. I've heard it referred to as measure, and in I guess what might be sort of moral relativity times, it's quite hard to imagine a way of things, isn't it? Because that's quite an affront to any a diversity of opinion, perhaps, when in fact, as an engineer, I think possibly, Tom, this appeals to you, doesn't it, as an engineer, to know that there are laws of the universe and of everything. You know, everything is governed by laws, is it not? And if we could tune into those laws, we would get amazing insight and even results if we put those laws into practice.
Yeah, although laws can be quite a hard term to use, isn't it? So I'd call them more tendencies. So people talk about the law of attraction. Yes. I'd call it the tendency of attraction. Yes. The tendency of things to go. And a law can also be have that sort of punitive connotation to it too. Which
that's what it's come to mean. We've made that happen, haven't we? Really?
Yeah. So really, I think that there's a tendency, and also if we think, there's a law of gravity, and we must obey it at all times, you'd never levitate, will you?
You need it to levitate, don't you? Arguably, as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, you need to understand the law of gravity. I'm quite hot in my face. I don't know why that is. So apologies about that. Maybe it's the law of my camera. It's emitting too much light from my face, and it's messing up the camera. I'll see if I can.
We've got a comment here from Mother Mulberry, who's saying, I've had to redirect my marketing strategies based on a feeling I had in my body. Feeling things are more achievable on my new course now. And that sounds really sort of in alignment with what you were saying with the mindfulness of feelings or sensations, like really sort of like tuning in, and also the mindfulness of the body. Is there an order that, like, for instance, Tom, like, let's say you had a problem to work through, would you maybe start with one, move to another, and to another, and to another? Is there like a series of checkpoints or questions you could ask yourself and take yourself like on the journey of that square?
Or a tendency?
I tell you what I do. I started top right and went clockwise. Only because I'm pretty sure in my book that's the order I wrote them in, because I'm the engineer. But if you started top left and went anti-clockwise, you'd end up with a different result. And there's health and there's benefit in doing things the other way, because you've always done things one particular way and you got to a certain result. Wouldn't it be great if you just turn everything on its head and go around the other way? But I'd also start with what's the thing that presents. You know, so if you get up in the morning and there's an uneasy feeling, then start with the mindfulness of feelings and sensations. But let's all flip that on the head, because what I do is I don't run a to-do list anymore. I run a to-love list. So if you get up in the morning and think, as Mother Mulberry said, you get up in the morning and think, you know what, I really want to do this thing today because I love to do it, even though it's not the top of my priority list. Go with it. So go with the feeling that comes up. And I'm very big advocate of the hypnopompic point between being asleep and being awake. And the ideas that come in at that point, it's almost like the soul nudging you, say, hey, by the way, while your head isn't very busy, let me just give you this idea. And by the way, it wouldn't be a bad idea if you just run with that first, because then you'll be in a much better state than the state you might thought you had been.
Thomas, I love my snooze button so much because I'm putting myself in that state.
You're just in that state, yeah. And I've got this track. I've got a track free, of course, on Inside Timer called Hypnopompia, and I've got this other track called Hypnopompia Extended, which is an hour long. You should definitely have the extended version.
It sounds like house, like trance tunes. Hypnopompia. It sounds like something you'd hear in Ibiza,
isn't it? It'd be a great name for a club, wouldn't it?
It would. It really would. Yeah.
Do you know the opposite club is Hypnagogia?
Yes, Hypnagogia, just down the street.
But that's the moment just before you fall asleep, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So, and that's the point where you can seed things. So you can say, well, actually, I'm going to bed tonight. I had a bit of a strange day today. It didn't go that well. I'd love to get a dream in to help me, or to wake up in the hypnopompic point with the solution to the thing that's been bugging me today.
I did that last night and this morning, quite coincidentally. Yeah.
Tom, I really like when you said there's a right way to do things for maximum impact for least turbulence. Could you talk to me, like you mentioned that there were, Carl said laws, I think you said laws, but like tendencies. What tendencies would you work through to do things for maximum impact, but the least amount of turbulence? I love the idea of the love list and hypnopompic, like using your hypnopompic state. What other things could we add to that to help us get maximum impact for the least turbulence?
Well, that's a great question. I think the main thing to realize is there's a flow, and I think you'll appreciate this as an astrologer. There should be. I did do once. I must dig out what it was. I'm pretty sure I augmented this with 5 modes of mindfulness, and I added timefulness to it, and timing being really crucially important. We talked about the hypnopompic time as this seed time, we get the seed out, but this idea that we've got the 4 moon phases, and we should be mindful of those. We should be mindful of the 4 seasons, and we should be mindful of 4 elements, and the fact that the number 4 comes into our world a lot, and I get woken up at 4:44 pretty much every morning. That's why I get into a deep hypnopompic state, because I've been awake for about an hour, then I fall into this deep sleep, and then into this hypnopompic flow. And I think sailors used to be awake for 4 hours, and then they go to sleep for 2 hours. That's our natural sort of sleeping cycle, which is why power snoozes are much to be advocated. So I think the way of things. The way of things should be augmented with a timing of things as well. And then when you do things at the right time, to do it in the right way with that minimum, the maximum impact, the least turbulence. And I don't know if that dodged your question or augmented it.
I now want to ask you about what's the right way. Like, are there some key words that you might use to sort of like jog your memory about the right way of doing things?
Well, let's talk about words then. So the words you use, I've just been crafting an email this morning, and I'm really mindful that there's no fear in it. So there's no. By the way, buy this now. It's a sales email, right? To people who have downloaded something for free. So there's no buy this now because it's going up in price. I've taken all of that out. I've taken all the early birds off my site.
Good for you.
There's no fear of missing out. And it's all about aspirations. It's all about writing a book. And the fact that my first 3 books, funnily enough, I noticed after I'd written my first 3 books that I'd written them all in spring. So I don't even try and write a major book now any other time than that. And I'm now working on the ideas bubbling up for the next thing I'm going to write starting in the spring equinox. And so in this email is all about, there's no negativity in it. So there's no buy this now, otherwise you're going to miss out on this deal. It's all about aspirations, and it's all about support, and it's also about reaching out to the future, because at the end of it I said, by the way, here's an interview on New Reality TV for someone that took one of my courses. If you take one of these courses, I want you on New Reality TV as my guest to talk about the thing you went through. So we go into this lovely cycle together where we pull ourselves up with our own
journey. It's a journey, isn't it?
Yeah. So what better guest could I have than someone who's taken my course on how to write a book?
Absolutely. Can we put Siri's comment up? Because this is very interesting, and I think comes back to the question that was being asked about knowing the way of things and the right timing and the right things to do. Norwegian band Aha, we know them. Love them. Morten Harket, he was the lead singer, wasn't he? Has a song called The Swing of Things, not their best known one in where we're from. I love that saying too. What is the swing of things to get the flow going again, Thomas? It's a question around the same theme really here, isn't it? Of right timing.
No, actually goes right back to the modes of mindfulness. Like, you've got to prime your body so it's got the right nutrients in it, it's hydrated, and all that sort of stuff. You've got to be aware of your feelings. So a great way I used to work with people with feelings that were not so good was to use the writing process as catharsis, to take the feelings from one state to another. So you reframe them. Be mindful of sort of your mind and the words that are coming through, all the ideas that are coming through, and then to write. So you're writing in a very positive way in the way of things, and adding that fifth mode of mindfulness about the timing of it all. If you're feeling not creative, as you weren't, just be aware. Hang on, what phase is the moon in? How far is the equinox away right now? You can be creative any time of the year. So I wrote a book in September last year, which I wasn't planning to write. It just popped through me. And also just be mindful of this idea. So all of these ideas were coming in. I didn't know I was supposed to write a book. It wasn't in my plan, but I allowed the book to come through. And that excited me and enthused me, and it's excited and enthused other people as well. So I knew, in retrospect, I knew it was the right thing to do, but at the time I knew it was the right thing to do as well.
And possibly, given the theme of today and what's on the screen there, is to keep coming back to mindfulness. What I'm noticing is when we have questions, we've gone into thinking rather than mindfulness, which, if I can flesh that out, thinking would appear to be focusing on something like, I am thinking, I am not being very creative. Whereas you can have an awareness and a mindfulness of, oh, I seem to be thinking that. I'm aware of myself thinking that, rather than being lost in the thought and the self-judgment of, I'm not very creative. And those are two very different states, aren't they?
Yeah, well, it is. And you bring me to my third book, Flavors of Thought.
We didn't confer with
we should line up. I think maybe we should start talking about the flavors of thought for our next conversations. How about that? How not all thoughts are necessarily the same, and not all our thoughts are necessarily what we think of as our own.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Who does this belong to?
I've got a diagram. I've got there's 22 modes of thought we can talk about as well, and then a 23rd, which is a special mode of thought too.
Can you guide us then in this last couple of minutes from, we've been thinking about mindfulness. Can you bring us into a more mindful, resourceful state to go into the week with?
And there's a caveat. We've only got 2 minutes.
Yeah, he can do it. If anyone can do it, Tom can do it.
Well, you're only 3 breaths away from the next bright idea, aren't you? Yes. And so if I was to get you all to breathe together for 3 or 4 in and out breaths, and then just be mindful of the gap between the in and out and the out and the in, and do that 3 times. Okay. Just let's do that right now. So let's breathe in and pause, then out and pause, and then in and pause, then out and pause. And in that time, I just got in the seed for the conversation we're having next week. We're going to talk about the archetype. We're going to talk about the archetype of the fool, and how the fool in the tarot is the wisest card in the pack.
Yes, that's
and a state of consciousness that we can get into where this stuff just flows through.
Yeah.
I'm
never going to stop fooling around.
No, you won't, will you?
No, probably not. I have to live that archetype to prove your point.
And the fool goes with the swing of things, to loop back to what Siri just said about the aha.
Yeah, it's like, come on, everyone, lighten up. The jester in the royal court, and we need that right now.
I always think of Alan Partridge when we go aha. So
yeah, me too.
Yes, yeah. And what's the big aha tune? I can hear it.
Take on me.
Take on me. That's been a brilliant take on mindfulness, Tom. Thank you so much. We've got to go in about 15 seconds. Are you ready there, Mrs.
I really, really loved that. I loved how we went from your model, and we now have an order of what we're going to do it all in next time. So we're going to look at the Fool, then Flavors of Thought, and then the 8-fold Noble Path.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
So much.
Thank you, Tom.
Lots of love.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.